If you're in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, try Pop Chevrolet. Pop Chevrolet will get you the best price guaranteed. Visit popchevy.com. That's P-O-P-S Chevy.com. This episode is brought to you by Paintsville Tourism. Paintsville is located in eastern Kentucky in the heart of the US 23 Country Music Highway. Visit paintsvilletourism.com. That's paintsvilletourism.com. Come see why Paintsville is eastern Kentucky's city of note. This episode is brought to you by Wild Bill's Fireworks. At Wild Bill's, they will help you start and maintain a successful fireworks business. Whether you're starting a retail store, a seasonal tent, or a part-time venture, Wild Bill's is your one-stop wholesale fireworks supplier. Their team can help you pick inventory. They offer business training, ongoing support to make sure you stay profitable no matter the size of your business. Call or text for more information. Just ask for Bill at 606-367-5569. That's 606-367-5569. Or visit wildbillsfireworks.com and make sure you ask about their financing plan. Welcome to Behind the Shed podcast. In this episode, we welcome guest David Ferguson, also known as Fergie. He was chief engineer for Jack Clement, a songwriter and producer. We hope you enjoyed the show. This is Behind the Shed.
We're honored today to have a really talented person with us. And in addition to being really talented, he's a funny guy and does a great impersonation of Johnny Cash that we'll try to get him to do later on. But David, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Harold.
And, I sure hate these headphones.
Boy, they suck, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And
but you look good in them.
well, yeah, thank you. But we're happy to have you here, and we are sorry that two of the people didn't make it because of
the weather
conditions.
Half an inch of snow.
So you're one of the really tough guys.
Yeah, man.
And that's why
I'll do anything to get out of the house. I do anything to hear myself on a microphone.
So we're glad you're here.
Me too,
Yeah,
Harry.
man.
Me too, Harold.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you and especially our friendship over the years.
I think it's been about 35 years or a little longer. I think I met you right as I went to work at Clement's, which is about 1983. However long that goes, is that 40 years ago? 83?
That's about 40 years ago.
Yeah, 42. I met you in 83.
Yeah. And we knew each other, actually, I think before that, maybe. I'm not sure.
I think I met you right around 83, or 82, 83.
Yeah,
and,
at the old City Cafe, I think.
Yeah.
So
Let's see.
That's
Maud's Courtyard. There was various bars, some bars.
Well, I guess we did meet at several bars over there.
I got thrown out of a bar, and Harry got me back in there.
Yeah.
I had we'd all go down to this place called the Longhorn, and there was I went in there one night, one evening, and I was about half lit, and this guy. I was in there, I don't know, I was using some foul language, and this guy looks over at me and he goes, "I'm trying to conduct a business meeting." I said, "At a damn bar?" And I said, "Piss on you." And man, that guy attacked me. He went off. And they had these big wooden bowls of peanuts in there. I don't know if you remember that or not, these big wooden bowls. And he was on the other side of the room, and I took that big wooden bowl of peanuts and threw it all the way across that room at him. Peanuts went all over the place, and they said, "You're barred forever." And so, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 months later, we was all up at the music bill, and Harold says, let's go down and have a drink down to Longhorn. I said, I can't go in there, And he said, well, if you can't go in there, we can't go in there. Come on, we'll go in there. And we went in there, and they never said a word. you know. But a couple of years later, I went back in there, and they come walking up to me, and they said, "You David Ferguson?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "They said you got to go, man." I said, "Okay."
You better go get Harold and come
Good
back.
enough.
That's funny. Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember that like it's
Yeah,
yesterday.
man. So, David, tell us how you got in the music industry.
Well, I was call me Fergie, please. That's what everybody calls me.
I normally
but
would. But
yeah, it's okay. Call me. It's good to call me that. But
Mr. Ferguson, no.
so when I guess I was about 14 or something. I started roadieing for this band. You know, hauling the equipment and hooking it up and stuff. I learned how to do that, and then when I was about 16, one of the guys that came into that band left that band and met another guy that was in this other band that he joined called the Dremels, which was these space guys. You know, they wore tights and lit up shoes and stuff, and guitars that lit up and that. And so I started roadieing for them. Well, the main guy that his band, his name is Chris Camp. He worked as a luthier at the Old Time Pick and Parlor, which was down on 2nd Avenue, and it used to be a performance place and stuff, but they turned it into a music store, and it was a music store and a repair shop, and it was like premier repair shop at the time. All the bands that come through town would get their stuff fixed there. You know, I met everybody, Bill Monroe, everybody come through there. So there was that, and I was there for a couple of years, and then it closed. And then the guy that owned it, his name was Coley Coleman, and he's a really talented guy that could do all kinds of sculpture and build guitars and stuff. He called me. He said, "Fergie," he said, "I got this job. I've been working for this really eccentric producer named Jack Clement." And he goes, "You want the job? You know, we need somebody to make coffee in the mornings and run errands and stuff." I said, "Hell yeah," because I had started working construction, and I was like going up 6 scaffolds high, you know, and taking stones off a building and stuff, which I could never do. Now I'm scared of heights. But I was scared coming up those steps. My balls started tingling when I was halfway up those steps. So anyway, so I went to work for Cowboy. And I remember my first interview. Coley said, "Look, you got to get through Mary. Mary does the hiring and firing for this position," and Mary Todd, her name. And so she was interviewing me, and I said, "Can I use the restroom? Where's the restroom?" She said, "Yeah, go through there, and it's right down the hall on the right." So I walk, you know, I get down, I go in there and pee, and I come back, and there's this guy with his beard trashed at like 10 o'clock in the morning, bouncing off each side of the hall. And I just, whoa. And I asked her, I said, "There's this old dude with, you know, the beard, you know, bouncing off the walls in there, kind of drunk." She said, "That's the boss." I mean, and that was early in the morning. It was early, you know. He'd stayed up all night or whatever.
Oh my God.
So anyway, I got that job, and then there was this really great engineer that was there that engineered these really great records that still are great today, some of them. And I was really interested in running their studio, and so he would show me how to hook stuff up and how to signal path, basically. Mm-hmm. And then I started sneaking in there at night and learning how to run it, you know. And I think Jack knew it the whole time, you know. He's always wanting people to learn stuff. So after a while, he went on vacation. Jack went on vacation down with Dickie Betts down to Florida. And while he was gone, me and this guy, Jack Stackertrack, I don't know if you remember him, Harold, but he used to come over to the mill every once in a while. Jack Stackertrack, Grossmall, he was an engineer. Yeah. He and I went up with this guy named Roberto Bianco. His real name was Bob White. And
the legendary voice. What was he?
The voice of our time, the romantic voice of our time.
That's it,
yeah,
yeah,
that's where he was invented. Was there, and
right.
So they had written this song called "My Soon to Be Former Wife." You know, wants 50% of my life, and it's a big band swing thing. And he and I made this record on this guy while Jack was gone. And I called in, I called down to Blair School of Music, and I said, you got a couple of trumpet players that, really want some little studio experience? And they said, yeah, I'll send you my 2 best guys, And so we did all these parts. It was a live thing with this big drum roll on it and applause and audiences and this announcements and all this crap. It was just totally phony baloney.
Yeah.
But Jack came back and he listened to it 100 times. He listened to it 100 times. And in his office, just loud as hell. And then I get the order to come to Ferguson, come to my office. And I said, oh, Lord. It's always Ferg. If it's Ferguson, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Or David.
You go sooner.
Oh, yeah. So I went in there and he played it. And he said, did you do this? And I said, well, me and Stack, we kind of did it together. And he goes, well, I was out of town. I said, yeah. He said, without my permission. I said, yeah, Cowboy. He said, on my tape. And I said, well, it was used tape. It was some old tape that was up there. And you could put the thing on. And if you soloed a track, the tape was so old, you soloed a track, you could hear shit going backwards on it, for it's used tape.
Yeah.
And he said, use my tape, my studio, my time, without my permission. He said, you're fired. He said, I'm going to hire you back to be my engineer at $35 an hour. and it happened that fast.
That's great.
Yeah, that's how I got it. And that was a big life-changing moment for me.
Yeah, man.
No kidding.
And then one of the other jobs he made up for me was pitching songs, trying to pitch songs. He didn't know nothing about pitching songs. But I'd go to the bar and hang out with Chuck Bedwell, who worked for Harold down at the mill. And there were several others. There was, what's his name? There was a bunch of others. There was Rich Alves. And
Rich Alves.
And who was the guy? Todd Wilkes.
Yep.
Todd Wilkes.
There was a mess of us that would meet up at the bar, and then we decided to just like, it's like, okay, well, who do you know is recording, blah, blah, blah. And we were all good buddies, and Chuck said, man, we ought to start a club. We meet every Tuesday at one of the other guys' places, And so we started this club, the Young Turks. Mm-hmm. And it started getting members right away. There were some girls in there that were trying to pitch songs for people. And then there was Sonny Tillis, just a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, man. There was everybody just looking for a reason to have a party,
Yeah.
Anyway, we started that, and I never did get a cut on nobody. And I never did. I didn't have any new songs. All the songs that were at Jack's, everybody knew all those songs.
Yeah.
He had a great catalog, like Living on Tulsa Time and She Thinks I Still Care.
Yeah.
It was a big catalog of great songs that made money. But
Brian and Chuck are both part of this thing.
Are they?
Brian's out of town. Yeah.
Chuck Bedwell is?
Yeah, Chuck is too.
I would love to see. I haven't seen that guy in 30 years.
I wish we'd have done. This was so last minute, moving today that, but I wish he was here.
And who else?
And Brian Rawlings, Chuck Bedwell, and Jason Morris.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chuck Bedwell.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen him in so long. He was such a funny guy. Man.
He is.
The women used to just fall over that guy.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck's a great one, man. What a cool story. That's fun stuff. It's so interesting to me that you started under a legendary character.
Lucky. Lucky to
see. I feel the same way.
Fall in just like fell out of the sky on me.
Yeah, I feel the same way because I got.
I hear you, man.
You know what I mean?
I was lucky enough to meet Harold through Chuck, and then there was this other lady that worked for us. She was a secretary there. She was real pretty, and she was dating a guy that was the mastering engineer over at Masterphonics.
Yeah, Carolyn.
And what was his name? You remember?
Benny Quinn.
I used him all the time.
Benny Quinn.
Benny Quinn.
Yeah.
Benny Quinn. I wonder what happened to him.
I haven't seen him
He's still around, I think.
Is he?
Yeah.
He was a great guy. He was a great guy. I used him for whenever me and whenever we did a record, we'd always take it over there to Benny and Michael Acker, you know.
Yeah. So when you first started engineering for Jack, for Cowboy, what were some of the other records you did after that thing?
Well,
stuff you worked
so on? There was a lot of stuff that came in that when he'd rent out the studio, and I was kind of the house engineer, and I said, okay, you get Ferg. But one of the first ones was, there was a couple other engineers around there, one named Rich Adler. And we were doing this Johnny Cash record. Steve Popovich took over Mercury. Steve Popovich took over Mercury, I guess, in 85. And then this is like the real records I was working on, the budgeted records. There was a lot of stuff come in off the street. You know, you make a record on a band and set them on their way. And who knows, I did a ton of those, one a week for forever.
You probably worked on some Johnny Paycheck back then.
I only recorded him one time, and he was great. And did you ever around him much?
No.
I'll tell you,
I just like his singing.
Man, I love his singing. Yeah. And I'll tell you my Paycheck story.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Behind the Shed. Today's sponsors are PopChevy.com, Paintsville Tourism, Wild Bill Fireworks, and the Kent Rose Foundation.
His guitar player and harmony singer, his name was John Long, and I talked to him. Hadn't talked to him since that. I was engineering his record up there at Cowboys, and he said Johnny's going to come in and sing on one. I said, man, that's awesome, man. I love Johnny Paycheck, you know. And so I had a setup for him with a Neumann U87, you know, and some headphones and stuff. And Johnny comes in. He was so friendly and kind. I mean, it was just not what you expect at all. Right. You know, you hear all this stuff about people, and he comes in, and he was just as sweet as he could be. And he said, "Where you want me?" I said, "Well, you know, I got you set up right here, Johnny." And he said, "I'm parched." He said, "Is there anything, you know, here to drink?" And I said, I said, Cowboy might have some scotch down there. He said, that'd be great. And so he said, bring me about that much scotch in a glass. And he said, then about that much water in a glass with no ice. I said, okay. So I go down to Jack's office. Jack's sitting behind his desk, writing memos. That's what he did most of the time. He'd sit there and you'd see him think like this, and he'd write something down. He'd think a little bit more, and he'd write something down. Nobody ever knows what he was writing, and then he'd, you know, wad it up and throw it in the trash, you know. And that was one of his things. But anyway, I went in there and I said, hey, Cowboy, Johnny Paycheck needs a drink. And he looks over his glasses like this. He goes, you sure you want to do that? And I said, I don't know. You know, I told him he might have he said, it's over there. And so I took him that much scotch and that much water in another glass. And he took the scotch and did it in one lick, did it in one shot, and then took his teeth out and dropped them in that glass of water. And he goes, I'm ready.
What a great song.
And he sung like a bird, you know.
That's funny. Oh my God.
That's such a great song.
Yeah, he was something
cool.
else.
That's great. So did you hung with Cowboy over there a little bit, didn't you?
A little bit, yeah.
Harry, have you told?
But I was the audience.
Well, Jack would hold court, but
yeah.
Now Harold told me one of the funniest stories I've ever heard, and you got to tell it. I don't know if you've told this story on your podcast or not, but tell us the story about the guy that gets the record deal with just a tape, and you get him in there, and that's one of the best stories.
Alive. Well, you know, I know the story pretty good, but so does Russ.
We just.
And that's one of Russ's stories, and he really tells it.
Oh, tell Tell it.
Well, we actually already did it.
Oh, you already did it?
Yeah, it's
God,
a great
that's
story.
Such a
though.
great story.
It is a great
Anyway,
story.
the guy gets a record deal with a tape and can't sing a damn lick.
No.
Yeah, so the deal
It
go ahead.
was a great story.
Yeah, well, we can tell it briefly again because maybe somebody won't see
Tell
that
it.
one.
Yeah.
But I had just come to work for Harold, and was pitching songs, and of course, the whole goal is to get to know artists so you can get them in there and play them songs all the time. That's part of the deal, and so he had signed them, and I got to be friends with him and his significant other. I don't know if it was his wife or not, but she was a great singer. I mean, beautiful.
Yeah,
So
girl.
she could sing.
Yeah, she was a Welsh girl and just beautiful. And it was an odd situation. They had a wolf. They had a pet wolf. That's the rest of the story they carried around with them. So they'd come to see me because they hadn't been in town all that long, and I became their best friend, of course, because I'm going to get songs. You know the story. And I liked them a lot anyway, but it was an odd situation. But anyway, in the end, they had put a bunch of songs on hold, and they were doing the first session, that day on a Monday. I'll never forget. I waited all weekend because I thought, sure, I was going to get 2 or 3 cuts on. They were signed to Capitol Records. And to illustrate how different it is now, go ahead.
One second. And to pick up on what you said earlier, Russ was there when all of this went down, and Capitol had actually signed this artist based on a tape they heard.
Right.
So that brings everything back up.
Yeah.
Well, they had a pet wolf.
They had a pet wolf they carried with them.
Good Lord.
And that's a whole other story. But so I was excited when they cut that day. I was up in the office and was pitching songs, and they did a 2:00 session. So at 6, by that time, everybody that worked in the office was gone except for me, and Harold was in the studio. So I was going to bop down there and see if I got my songs cut. And so after I got past the wolf that was tied up in there that didn't like me, in that little holding area when you walked in the control room. I got past there and I go in there, and Harold's facing away, of course, looking out the singer, and Cotton was in there. And the girl singer, the lead singer, was sitting in there. Hey, how you doing, Cotton? Cotton is the nicest
love
guy in
Cotton.
the world. Wait, come on in, So I sat down. I'm excited to hear how this is going. And this guy that's the duo partner is out on the floor. And just as I walked in, I got a great feeling. And I sit down, and the tape stops, and Harold says, come on in. and even then I didn't pick up on what was going on.
You hadn't heard it yet.
No, they had just stopped the tape when I walked in. So he walks in and sits down, and hey, how you doing, Russ? And everybody, hey, Cotton, everybody, and he sits down, and Harold turns around and looks at him and says, we got a problem. And he said, yeah, what's that, Harold? He said, you can't sing. And at first it didn't hit me, and then he said, what do you mean? He said, you can't sing. And he said, well, that's your opinion. Harold said, no, you can't sing. And boy, I look at Cotton, and we're both going, what are you going to do? You can't run out,
Yeah.
And they got into this bickering back and forth, and Harold said, that's not you on. Yes, it is. That's not you on. No, yes, it is. Finally says, okay, it's not. And you could finish the story. But it's like, oh my God.
I said, well, who is it? And he said, it's a friend of my brother's. I said, well, get him in here, because we were spending money, And
Oh, goodness.
he says, well, he's not here. I said, where is he?
Can we get him?
Yeah, can we get him? He said, well, he's in Ventura. So
but
that's one of the greatest stories.
That was the story,
Yeah.
really.
That's one of the greatest stories.
And in those days, though, everything started going so fast that people, I guess they didn't stop to say, well, let me hear you sing live once,
Well, there's that. I'm going to check out a guy later next week that I'm going to make sure,
Yeah, you have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
well,
even more so now.
Yeah, with this auto-tune and stuff.
With the, the AI stuff.
I know.
It is so good.
Yep.
I know it.
Yep. I only was around Cowboy a couple times, but we bought that house in 2015.
Right
I think,
after
or
he
something.
died.
Yep. And we got in there. We were in there a week, and I called Harold, and I said, come over, man. He said, I want to come over and see the place. I hadn't been there for a while, so he walked in. Now again, I only met Cowboy in passing. I didn't really know him. My loss, I wish I had of. But anyway, Harold walks in the kitchen back there, And he goes, oh my God. He said, man, Cowboy used to call me and say, Harold, get over here. John's making chili.
That's
he
right.
He said, Russ, you ever eat a John's chili? And I'm going, Harold, I
It
don't
was
know
so
Johnny.
damn hot you couldn't eat it.
Well, I didn't. I only met Johnny Cash one time too, But I'm going. Well, of course I didn't ever eat his chili. I didn't know him or Cowboy.
Man,
that's the first thing he said when he walked in the building.
Yeah, that's the only thing I ever went there for.
Socially,
Johnny
called me one time, and this is not long before he passed away. This is maybe a year or two, where he passed away. He calls me and he goes, Ferg, he said, I've heard tell that people smoke marijuana for pain. And I said, I've heard that too. And he said, do you think you could get me a couple of prescriptions of it? And I said, yeah, I guess, And I said, where are you, Captain? I called him Captain. He said, I'm out at Bon Aqua. He's out at his farm, Bon Aqua. And so I didn't have any marijuana, no pot, but Cowboy, I had never ran out. And I said, Cowboy, Captain just called, and, he's wanting a couple of prescriptions of marijuana out there for his pain. I can tell this story, Kim.
Sure.
Well, for his pain, he's out at Bon Aqua, and he said he's got chili out there for us. And so Cowboy says, okay, well, let's ride out there and take care of him, And so we drove out to Bon Aqua, which is about, I guess it's about 25 or 30 miles out going toward Memphis, before you get to Dixon, or maybe after Dixon. Anyway.
Yeah. Half an hour.
Yeah. So we went out there and he was in there and he made this chili. And so we tried to eat some of this chili, and I said, it was so hot. I couldn't eat it. I mean, he said, this is my favorite recipe. And he would cut up the best sirloin steak you could find to put in it. And that was the only meat that was in it, was chunks of sirloin. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he just throw the cayenne pepper to it and black pepper. And I guess his taste buds were just gone. But me and Cowboy couldn't eat it. I said, I can't do it, Jack. And so I thanked Johnny for the chili, and he says, and so he's sitting there doing his fingers on the table like this, and Cowboy whips it out, whips out a joint. And I never smoked with Johnny up till this point, never, ever smoked any pot. We never saw him smoke any, but he was smoking it, and it gets down real small, and Cowboy gets out his little alligator clip, little roach clip, clips it, all this stuff. Johnny said, is it that precious? I remember it like it just, and Cowboy says, yeah, it's pretty precious. And, and, get down to that thing and, doing this with a little roach clip and that. And after he smoked that joint, he couldn't wait for us to get out of there.
Yeah.
He was starting to say, thanks for coming out, boys.
Yeah.
He was,
kick back.
couldn't wait to get rid of us.
Oh, that's funny.
Give us a good Johnny.
Well,
so long.
Well, all right, son. Chance Martin ain't with us anymore. I wish he was. That's about all I got.
That's great. That's good.
Yeah, man, that's fun.
And
yeah, we had a really great mutual friend, Chance Martin.
I knew him, yep.
Yeah.
And Chance has been gone, a year now?
Yeah, maybe 2 years.
Has it been 2?
Maybe longer than that.
It may be.
Boy, what a guy, though, man. I had so much fun with that guy.
Now, he came to the house a good bit. A lot of those people that y'all worked with over would come by and see Eileen.
Yeah.
And then Steve Poffich Jr., I let him use the studio when he had a Sirius XM.
Yeah.
And Chance was part of that.
Right, he was doing the Alamo Jones,
was part of that. What a great guy.
And he got, he got the Alamo Jones name. We used to call and laugh at each other on the phone, and we got to laughing about Jim Jones.
Yeah.
Being, and then sunglasses and all that black hair dyed up there, all that. And Tony Alamo, how much alike they were with their dyed up hair, you know, and that's where the Alamo Jones came from. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Wow.
And then we made these fake commercials. You remember those commercials?
Yes, I remember those.
The hair in the can and the EP29 that'll keep your feature linked.
HR29.
Yeah.
I never heard those.
Oh, God,
they're
great.
God,
they're
I got
funny.
a copy of. They're great.
There's some funny ones.
Oh, they're so good. Yeah.
Had a lot of fun doing those. He had the hair in the can, you know, spray paint the hair on you.
Yeah.
You know. Oh, it's funny, man.
I ought to get some of that and just paint little squares on my head. Yeah, I like that.
I just have it tattooed.
It seems like an idea. HR29 was just something for the hair. I don't think it.
No, there was EP29, which was Elvis Presley 29, which was the hair in the can. And then there was the AH29, which was the hemorrhoid medicine, asshole 29.
Okay.
And then there was backup 29 that'll keep you feature length.
Yes.
It was all had that 29.
At least 2 performances.
Yes, it keep you. Yes. When you're not able to perform,
that
it's
is
embarrassing.
so funny.
Yeah, and then he had the 2001 Alamo kit, where you get it all in a gold embossed vinyl hide saddlebag, you know, and the whole bit. Just funny stuff.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah. That's fun stuff.
Johnny we never spent the time. You got to spend a lot of quality time with him, especially when you would go to the islands and record for a week or two.
Oh, man. I'd go down there. First time I went down there was in right after Christmas of 85. He invited me and Cowboy to go down there, and Cowboy didn't want to go. He'd been. And so I went. And I got there. Johnny and June were always trying to get me with Rosie, you know, June's second daughter. Mm-hmm. And I liked Rosie a lot, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, she picked me up at the airport and all that. And I was saying, oh, geez, you know. And but I get there, and I'd never even been out of the States, you know. And excuse me. Anyway, I get to the house, and Johnny says, "Welcome to Jamaica." And he was sitting all dressed in white on his porch, you know, eating mango and stuff. It was incredible. It was like a fantasy island, you know. Yeah. And I was there for, I don't know, an hour. And he says, "Ferg, come in here. Come to the living room." And so I go in the living room, and he said, and he handed me this big stack of Jamaican money, you know, big old stack of Jamaican money. And he said, "Now don't take any of this money and get on that golf cart right outside and go down the way to that waterfall where they sell that marijuana and get any." I said, "I wouldn't dream of it." And I got right on the golf cart and went down the waterfall. And there's, you know, a guy, Johnny's place was in the middle of a golf course and Rose Hall Plantation. And he had a house called Cinnamon Hill. Anyway, so I went down there and got rolling papers. They had these rolling papers that were really long and pink, you know, really odd. And so it started raining, and so I was in their cellar, and I was in the cellar smoking some, and I hear June say, "John, Ferg smoking that ganji in the house." And I said, "Oh, Lord." And I hear these footsteps going across up there, and the door opens, and he goes, "Not in the house, Ferg." He slams the door. He was the best, man, that guy.
God, I wish I could have known him.
There was another time I went down there, and we loaded up all his equipment. Me and Sean Carter loaded up all his stuff. He wants to record down there. I went to record him a lot down there. We did he recorded. They had this electronic Bible where he recorded all these verses. You know, you could push a button and he would read you a Bible verse, or, you know, from like a whole lot of them in the New Testament. And it took about a week to do it.
Wow.
Well, anyway, I was down there and I was hitting golf balls. You know, I had Willie Nelson had sent him some clubs because he lived in that golf club. So Willie had sent him a little set of golf clubs, really nice golf clubs. And so I was hitting golf balls off into the woods, you know. He lived on this hill, and you just hit them off and let them go, you know. And he said, Ferg, I'll get you some golf balls tomorrow. And I said, all right, Captain, you know. I was just hitting them off, and I was showing him how to hit them, you know. And 2 or 3 days in a row, he'd come up there, and he'd have like a garbage bag with 20 or 30 golf balls in it. And I was saying, where the heck is he finding all these golf balls? So I followed him one morning on the golf cart. Him and June take off on the golf cart, right? And I follow him. I'm watching him. And he pulls up beside the driving range. And up in this mimosa tree, he's got a stick that's about 20 feet long. And he's going over this fence, scraping these golf balls from the driving range over there and picking them up. And he was stealing golf balls from the driving range. It was so good.
Oh, that's funny. Oh,
He's a character, man, that guy.
yeah, man, no kidding. That's great. So, who else did you work with over there when you were working at Cowboys?
You know, I worked with most everybody that would come through there. I did a lot of stuff with, I engineered a lot of stuff for Jim Rooney. Mm-hmm. He was producing a lot of folk kind of records, folk and bluegrass records. Got to do some good ones of those, but mainly the budget records were the Johnny Cash records and the Johnny Cash duet record with the ones, you know, I mean, at that time it was impossible to make any kind of radio record on Johnny Cash. Sure. It was just impossible.
Right.
You know, but I mean, Cowboy wasn't trying to do that anyway.
Yeah.
He was just trying to make something good, you know?
Yeah.
And, but I got to work with a lot of people and got to know a lot of people through that. Waylon, you know?
Yeah.
And, but the other hangarounds that were around there all the time was Prine was always around there. And I mean, he was in there several times a week just hanging out. Mm-hmm. Townes Van Sant was there all the time. Wow. And, Guy Clark, those guys, and Waylon would drop in. Johnny would drop in if he was in town. They all just loved it over there, you know. It was a clubhouse.
Cool. Yeah.
And Jack would feed everybody. Jack had this maid. Her name was Lucille. She's a little black lady that I would pick up on Tuesday mornings and bring her in. And she would fry him chicken and make him fresh turnip greens and stuff. And that whole house just smelled like your grandmother's cooking.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was the greatest, you know.
That's so cool.
But learned a lot about video, you know, how to, he had a little offline
Yeah, he was doing
editor.
that before anybody.
He was doing it. He loved it so much. He spent his fortune. In the 70s, late 70s or mid 70s, around, I guess it was probably around 75 or whatever it was. He had made a lot of money producing Charley Pride. And I think he produced about 10 or 12 gold albums in a row on that guy. And he got in 69 and 70, I think he was the male vocalist of the year, the CMAs, you know, a black guy. And he was really selling a lot of records. And Jack had made several $1 million. And he decided he wanted to make a movie. And so he found this guy. There was this guy, this is before my time, but I heard about it all. And when I went to work there was still some of the props around. And but he had this guy named Ron Dorfman who knew about film and this and that. And then he got a script of a horror movie, of all the things to make a horror movie, you know. And And the name of the movie is called Dear Dead Delilah. And he spent all of his money on it. He spent all of his money on it, making it. And then it starred Will Geer, who was grandpa on the Waltons, that guy. Mm-hmm. And Agnes Moorehead, who was from Bewitched. They were the two stars. And it's just a terrible movie. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, Jack never read the script. He never read the script. What he wanted to see was that opening thing produced by Jack Clement, and that's the first thing you see, or when it put on the film, and so he had to pay it off, to pay for all of it. He had to sell Jack's tracks. And the Sound Emporium, which the Sound Emporium was originally Jack Clement Recording Studios.
Yeah. Two big studios.
Two main studios, and Jack's Tracks. And the idea behind Jack's Tracks is he wanted to make tracks for people to come in and sing on, for some reason. I don't know, but. And so
the beginning of karaoke.
Yeah. That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so anyway, he had to sell all that, and then he had Jack Music International, the record label that Don Williams was originally on, and those first Don Williams records was on Jack's label. Mm-hmm. The good ones, the Come Early Morning, and
right,
and I Believe in Love, and all those things. They were all on Jack's label, and Alan Reynolds was the brains behind it. Alan Reynolds was running Jack's publishing company, Jack Music. And it may have been Jack and Bill Hall. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
I never met the guy. They had parted
Bill.
ways. You did? So they had Bill and Jack Music, and then
Hall Clement.
Hall Clement. That's right. And there's some good publishing companies. Jack sold that, and sold them studios.
Foster and Rice was right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember them guys.
Huge.
Yeah,
he had
Tulsa Time on that. He had it all. He had all the good stuff on that.
He had to sell all of that for the movie.
So he didn't sell. He sold the studios, and I think Hall Clement, but he still had Jack Music, and which is I think the one that had when I went to work there for the first few years. It had a lot of big stuff in it. It had. Rednecks, White Sox, and Blue Ribbon Beer. It had She Thinks I Still Care. It had Living on Tulsa Time, and a bunch of Amanda. Mm-hmm. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the bigger ones was in that company. Mm-hmm. But the songs that made Jack a lot of money were the ones that he wrote in the 50s that Jerry Lee cut and that he recorded on some of the artists at Sun, mainly Jerry Lee and Johnny Cash. Mm-hmm. But the songs that made Jack the most money of any songs that he wrote were the two really silly throwaway songs, one was called Dirty Old Egg Sucking Dog.
Right.
And Flush from the Bathroom of Your Heart.
Yep.
And the reason those made him so much money is they were on the Folsom Prison Live record.
Oh.
And they made him a ton of money. And I don't know, like a couple of years before Jack died, he got this check in the mail for a couple of $100,000, and he couldn't figure out what it was. He said, I don't know what it is. And they had used Egg Sucking Dog in a Volkswagen commercial.
Wow.
And somebody hooked a big sync deal, and
wow.
And but
wow.
And then when I went there, when he got his publishing back from Sun, Sam Phillips had it, And at that time, it was the 26-year law, I guess. After 26 years, it would come back to you, right?
Yeah, 28.
Or 28. Yeah, they changed that
Right.
later.
Yeah.
So he got it all back. And he gave the publishing to Bob Webster, the guy that was his publisher, the guy that worked for him ever since Beaumont, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Jack sold the catalog, when he sold Jack Music, that had to be part of the deal to really get the big money. And so when he sold that, I don't know, $4 or $5 million back then was a lot.
This is after the movie?
Oh yeah, this was
good.
this is after the movie. This is in I think he probably sold that in 87 or 88.
Wow.
Maybe 86.
Yeah.
But he sold it his accountant said, "You can't have it all. I'll let you have so much a month." and it lasted a really long time, you know.
That's great. Well, what a great way to come up in the music business. Now you started writing songs too, though. You've written a bunch of songs.
Well, I've written some songs, but I didn't really do it that very much until the last 10 years when I met this really great guy, Dan Auerbach, and got in a writing situation with him and Pat McLaughlin. You know, I introduced Pat to him. He said, "Ferg, I want to write some songs." I said, "All right, let me call John Prine." So I put him up with John Prine.
Wow, that's a good one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I said, "I'll get you some of these guys," you know, because he didn't really know anybody when he came here. Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking about a great guy. Dan's a great guy. Harold's been around Dan.
I don't know him, but
you'd really like him.
That'd be cool.
He's really talented.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
And a good guy.
And a good guy. And loves music and is really talented. I mean, he's like one of the best musicians I've ever, singers. Wow. You know, he's a great player.
Yeah.
And really creative, but he can sing like a bird, that guy.
Wow, yeah.
But anyway, I got in a situation to where I was in the room, you know, and Pat McLaughlin is probably one of the finest songwriters I've ever been around.
He's great.
He can get a song. You're going to get a good song if you write a song with that guy. Mm-hmm. It don't matter who you are.
Right.
You're going to get one.
Right.
And he's been probably one of my closest friends for the last 40 years or so.
Yeah, that's cool.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, another really talented guy.
Oh man, really good. Really.
They're everywhere in this town.
I took. He had a band called Tiny Town, and I took him to Harold. I took him to Harold.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I don't think they got it together, but Harold liked that band, the Subdudes.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I
was
an
offshoot of the Subdudes.
I love that band.
Tommy Malone.
Tommy Malone. He's still around, but Johnny Allen died.
No, his brother was it Joe or Bob or
who? Tommy?
Yeah.
I don't know about Tommy's brother, but
he had a brother.
Yeah. Oh, I
don't know how many, but I know he had one.
Johnny Allen was the other guy in the Subdudes that played the bass.
Bass, yeah.
And wrote and was co-writer on the songs.
That's right.
And he died here a few years ago. He
didn't know that.
Heroin overdose.
Wow.
And he had gotten off of it. He'd been clean for a long time, and I guess he thought he'd try it one more time.
Wow. Oh.
And,
that's awful. So now, where do you work now when you go and make records? Where do you go? What do you do?
I go over at Clements.
Changed?
I go over at Clements, man.
Good.
I cut over there. I cut everything I cut over there. It's like home to me. Mm-hmm. The studio's better than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. You know, it's there was the fire.
What kind of console do you have there?
An 80B, a Trident 80B.
80.
Yep.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. You had one in the B room of you had one in both rooms at one time, didn't you?
No, we had a TSM in one room and a Trident B in the original music mill.
Right.
And then the
B room of
B room.
And then you got that. You had that big octagon-shaped thing. What was it? Focusrite.
Focusrite.
Yeah, we built that.
And
I don't advise that.
Then we put the TSM in to the next. You know, it kept moving it around. Yeah, we had the Focusrite.
Yeah, that thing. You paid a lot of money for that thing, didn't you? Was it $500,000 or something?
Yeah. There's a story there. I was there for that.
Tell it. Tell it.
That's too long
I
to
remember.
tell.
I remember it was the talk of the town.
Now you digging up bones.
Well, I remember it was the talk
Oh,
of the
my
town because
God.
I went in there. I
It
couldn't
was a-
believe my eyes. I'd
It was
never
a
seen
great
anything like it.
piece of equipment. Still is.
Yeah, it was man, when we did that, you don't just buy that console, you build it. It's like building a house.
Right, you had
Oh,
to.
my
Well,
God.
you had to meet with them a bunch of times.
Yeah, and we'd pay
design just for you and that.
Yeah, we paid a third up front,
Oh.
a third halfway through, and a third on completion and delivery. And it's like, oh man, we met more times on that during that period of time. I mean, I just about had a heart attack, because you got to pay for it in English currency. So the accountants were always watching.
It
to see
changes every day.
Oh, yeah.
Lord.
Some days you could be paying way too much.
Yep.
But, nothing you can do about that.
The exchange rate changed all.
Whatever day you want to close, you can close.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then we get the console in, and nobody told us how. It's all discrete components.
Right.
It was all transistors, no chips. I mean, it was.
It was all There were no
Yeah.
chips in it.
Nope. The reason for that is Neve. In those days, not so much now, but in those days, most of the op amps weren't as good as discrete components. You
Right,
couldn't use
that's
exactly
right.
the same thing. So they got.
I think that's still the
for the
case,
most part,
pretty
yeah.
much.
But it got really hot, and nobody warned us about that. I mean, you couldn't even touch the faceplates.
Oh, really? It'd get that
We had
hot?
to redo the air
Yeah, we had to
conditioning.
redo it, yeah.
Oh, it was a deal.
So it was putting off that much heat.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a lot.
So you would turn it off at night when you left.
No, it stayed on, but we had to run venting up through the console to keep it, and they had told our tech guy at the time, but nobody told me. Neither of us knew that till it got in there. It was and it was a great piece of gear. It was beautiful. It did what it did, but boy, that was an ordeal. That was like, celebrating after you go to the moon and back, but on the way up there, it's not fun. It's a little scary,
So that console, after that one went in, that was what the Billy Ray record was made on, right? Or was it?
No.
It was before that.
No, it was before that.
What
And
did y'all-
Focusrite bragged about that after we put it in.
Did
The
they?
Achy breaky was cut on this.
Oh no! So it wasn't.
No,
I don't remember.
Yeah.
What did y'all
Now,
cut on
we
it?
might
Did you,
have
did you cut a
overdone
hit on it?
It could have been mixed on that.
Remember, they went out though before we bought the Focusrite. Joe and Jim had already mixed Achy breaky.
Oh,
It hadn't come out
okay.
yet. They went out to Ocean Way to try the one out there, and came back, and we compared the mixes, and they didn't like them.
So they went to L.A.
Yeah.
Ocean
Yeah.
Way,
And that wasn't the console's fault.
Well,
They just weren't-
what
they
did
just
they
weren't
have at
used to that.
Ocean Way at the time?
A Focusrite.
They did.
Yeah, they had one of the first ones. Yeah, we had number 6,
Yeah, they have
and theirs wasn't the curving
maybe
like ours. had.
5. Maybe there. New York is, I think, 3.
Yeah.
Are they still in use somewhere?
Yeah.
They
There's a documentary on YouTube about all of them that exist.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they show in the documentary, they show number 6 ended up in Nashville, Tennessee, and they show a plane landing at the airport and tell the story about the Music Mill console and where it is now. And
Oh, where is it now?
it's in Italy. Yeah.
So they're buying the electricity to feed that sucker.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I bet your light bill went through the roof.
Yeah.
Anything creates a lot of heat,
Yeah,
burning a
it
lot of
did.
electricity.
It did. But what a great console.
Well, they
It was-
probably got their own
Generator, solar system.
Yeah.
Solar system.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you guys ever worked together?
I don't think we've ever made a
we
record
never
together. We've
made a
come
record.
close. We've come close. But not to say we won't,
You should.
No.
I mean,
We're looking for something spectacular.
we're looking for the performance of a lifetime out of somebody.
Yes, that's it.
Like Chance used to say, is there no beginning to this man's talent?
That's
Is
fun.
there no beginning?
That's
Oh, I've never heard that
Is
one.
there no beginning to this man's talent?
You would have liked Chance Martin. He was a funny guy.
I knew him a
too.
little bit, yeah. I knew him a little bit. He was a funny guy.
And he could do,
He was Johnny.
could do
He was
different
the king of
people.
the Johnny Cash.
yeah.
Elvis and Cash, but he. So I know all them Cash daughters. Cindy and Tara, and I mean, the one I've talked to the most is Cindy, but I've crossed paths with all of them at one time. Kathy and Cindy, I
Now,
know
was
really
Cindy
well.
the youngest?
Cindy's the youngest, I think. Maybe Tara.
Tara.
Maybe Tara. There's four Cash sisters. There was Roseanne, Kathy, Cindy, and Tara. And they're all by the same mother, Vivian, John's first wife. But
So Roseanne, she had a career
she still does.
at Warner Brothers.
I don't know where she's at now.
I don't know.
Boy, I heard a record on her lately, though. She did that. If you hear the song, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, I'll be 500 miles.
500 miles away from home.
Yeah, but it's the original version, the folk version, and not the Bobby Bear.
Oh, another one?
Well, there's the original one that's
So
it's different than Bobby Bear's
Is it?
version.
Okay.
Yes, it's different, but it's the same melody,
yeah.
but the words are a little different. And it was maybe out by maybe the Kingston trio sounding thing a long time ago.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
But
yeah.
it was but anyway, she's got a version I heard on the radio.
It's got to be good.
It was so good. It's the best thing I ever heard her do.
Yep.
Since I mean and I even texted Kathy and Cindy to tell her that I really enjoyed that cut.
Yeah, man.
I got to
but-
go hear it now.
Oh, it's great. And yeah, and
And it was Cindy,
that was Roseanne who had that.
Roseanne.
But anyway, the girls, Cindy. So when they were little, so Chance worked for Johnny. He met Johnny because he was the guy with the did cue cards on all 58 Johnny Cash TV shows.
You know what? I knew that. He told. I forgot that.
And
Wow.
he's cue cards. And Johnny just fell in love with the guy, man. I mean, because Chance knew a lot about lighting. He knew how to light stuff for video and stuff. I mean, he's really good at it, pro. He learned how to do it at TNN, but he was in the stagehand union here. And so he got to work all those TV shows, and he was, he was like the first guy to do the cue cards. And he'd hold up Johnny's cue cards, and Johnny'd read them for the show. Every once in a while, he'd throw one in the upside down, and he couldn't say nothing. But Johnny just loved the guy. And so after the TV show, Johnny said, you want to go on tour with me and be my lighting director, And Chance says, well, of course, And so the other thing Chance was a great photographer. He was a great photographer, a natural at it. And he taught Johnny photography. And every picture Johnny took is because of Chance.
Wow.
And but anyway, this is some funny stuff right here. So Chance is down at in Jamaica. They're off tour and they're down in Jamaica. Johnny goes to Jamaica, and so Chance had gone down to the Intercontinental Hotel, which is, you get a golf cart and you ride down there. It's about a mile down to the Intercontinental Hotel, and he went down there and picked up some airline stewardesses, about 3 of them, and just had them bullshitted into thinking that was his place. And, and so he takes them up there, and they're sitting out on the porch at Johnny's. Johnny tells me his story, and Chance had told me his story too. But anyway, so he's out there, and Chance is saying, well, how do y'all like my place, And they said, oh, we love it. We love it. And then Johnny walks out. He goes, look, see, even my buddy Johnny Cash comes stay here sometimes. And Johnny said, I sure do appreciate it too, Chance. I played, right along with him. But
That's great.
what I was trying to get to was the girls said that when he was working for John and John wasn't home and June wasn't home, that they would let Chance make sure they got off the bus and got in the house. And Cindy said that sometimes he'd be dressed up like a pirate and come out and attack the school bus with a sword and stuff, And she said she thought he was funny till she found out how high he was later in life.
Oh, that's funny. I think we need more of that today.
He was a hero.
Yeah, that's fun.
But
That's fun stuff.
the reason why I even got to engineering Johnny Cash records was because of Marty Stewart.
Really?
I was working on Marty Stewart's
Way to go,
record.
Marty.
Yeah,
man.
And I was working on Marty Stewart's. He had gotten a record deal with CBS, and he did the record wound up being called "Let There Be Country," and I was, and I'd engineered some demos for him, and I was engineering Johnny's demos upstairs and people's stuff. Marty went to Cowboy, and he goes, "Man, that's the guy right there that needs to be engineering these Johnny Cash records, Ferg." And man, he stood up for me.
Wow.
With Johnny too. And,
wow.
Yeah. And Marty's a really good friend. I love Marty.
Yeah. A little bit I know him. He's a great guy.
He's a statesman now.
Yeah.
He's like he was a, I mean, he's.
Well, he's iconic.
He's made sure of it.
Yeah.
I mean, he has made himself a star.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a historian.
Yeah.
He's a historian and a collector.
Man.
I years ago, he called me and he goes, "Ferg, I'll be by to pick you up in 15 minutes. And so he comes by my house, picks me up, and I said, "Where are we going?" He says, "We're going to go out to my warehouse." And he took me someplace out off Nolensville Road somewhere. And he had 3 of these big storage units. The biggest ones they had together with doors cut in between them. And the place was floor to ceiling on every wall.
Wow.
Of nudie clothes, of guitars, hundreds of pairs of cowboy boots, records, books, everything you could imagine.
Wow.
The biggest collection of country music memorabilia of anybody in the world. I believe he has. I think he's got a better collection than the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I've heard that.
And
Wow.
yeah, I saw stuff you wouldn't believe. Hank
Yeah.
Williams' suits and boots and just sitting in
My
there. And
goodness.
he had it all set up with these couches where he could sit and look at all this stuff and listen to records,
Yeah.
Wow.
Just
How about that?
loving it, man.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
Boy, he's
Yeah,
he's
man.
really talented too.
Yeah, he is,
Really
yeah.
is, man. He's really good.
He can get him. I mean, he's funny about getting his picture made because, when they were doing, I don't know if y'all remember, but they did a record called The Class of '55, which was, who was the guy that sang the high voice, Pretty Woman guy? What was his name?
Roy Orbison.
Roy and I don't know, Jerry Lee and Johnny and Carl Perkins. Yeah. They did this Class of '55 record. But anyway, Marty went down there to play on it for Chips. Chips produced it. And Bobby Wood said he got back and started going through his pictures. He goes, Marty Stewart was in every picture he had. He said, I was looking at every picture I had. Marty Stewart was in it. So I'd be taking pictures of somebody and his head would pop up, back there. And I was out at a picking party out in Goodlettsville at this guy's place. And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff in this old store where you go pick, play music. There's this picture of Marty over there, this 8x10 of Marty over there. I said, damn. And I reached over there and turned it just to turn it around where I wouldn't have to look at it. And there was another picture of him on the other side.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, man. That's I never met Marty in person, but when I was pitching songs a lot, I'd go over and take cassettes and even later CDs to pitch to him over to Bonnie Garner because she was managing.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what he told me to do. We'd talk on the phone. He'd say, take him, get him her, and she'll send him out to wherever I am on the road because he was always on the road.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I sent a song. I'd overnighted to where he was going to be the next night. And I didn't sit still very well, so I'd go out and pitch him and just go crazy if I had a new song. So I sent a song out one day, and he called me back like 2 days later, put that on hold. Well, I said, it's already on hold for so-and-so. And it came out, and it was a big record. And it happened a couple other times. I go and I leave a song and overnight it to him. So finally, after I think Little Less Talk and a Lot More Action was the last one. It was a big hit. I'd taken it over there and overnight to me. He called me and said, put it on hold. I want. I said, well, it's already on hold. Because all those would happen quick, And he said, next time you get one of those, put it on hold and then send it to me.
That's good. That's
He's a funny guy.
Yeah, I like Marty a lot. I talk to him often.
Well, I'd like to. I was always a big fan. Big fan.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's in the Country Music Hall of Fame, but man, he knows how to play the game.
Yeah.
He knows how the politics work. That was a good.
What year did he go in?
He went in 2 or 3 years ago.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah, recently, the last 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah, he should be.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
We're starting a movement to get Harold in. Okay, so
well, I'm in.
Wow.
I'm totally in. Man,
too.
I lost my good contact down there though.
That
Peter
would be
Peter
some
Cooper.
kind of movement.
Oh, yeah.
there,
You know, he
Yep.
was a good buddy, and
yeah,
now we just got to get the movement going, buddy.
we're working on it.
Got to get him in there. Y'all should done been in there. You know.
Not all y'all. Yeah, him.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm not part of that.
Well,
we're working on it. Yeah, Ferg just joined the team.
But that's okay. you know.
however I can help. I mean,
Yeah, man.
I'm real pro Hall of Fame.
Me too.
Nashville.
me too.
It's a great place. You can spend hours. You can spend all day if
Yes,
you
you
really
can.
want to know what's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, man. You
Yep.
can.
It takes all day.
It takes all day to read it and enjoy
it
it.
does.
You know, and
Yep.
they've done a great job with it, man. It's come a long way since
It's
they
a
put it in the
beautiful
big building.
place.
Yeah,
It sure
it
is.
is.
Yeah, man.
Kyle Young's done a good job.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
He really has. Hey, man, real quickly, talk about some of the records you're making today and the differences. And I know you worked on the Sturgill Simpson stuff,
Yeah.
which is huge, big stuff.
So,
Versus the way you used to. Any changes the way you make records?
you
today?
know, I learned a lot about what not to do with Cowboy. You know, he would work on it till they took it away from him.
Yep.
You know, and after he'd spend his share of the money on it too. you know, I mean, but I learned a lot what to do, and you got to bring in the herd. You know, you got to finish, and you got to be able to stand up and say, "Okay, it's done." You know, even though you could work on it until forever. You know, but at
Forever is a word.
yeah, at a point though, you gotta be the one that say it's done.
Yeah,
But
that's it.
I had met Sturgill at a card game at Dan Auerbach's house, and he was looking for somebody to work with him to make a record. And Dan said, "There's your guy right there. You guys are made for each other. You're from the same part of the country, you know, Tennessee and Kentucky." And I met with him, and we became fast friends, and we did that record. I called in the musicians for him and did a lot of the production stuff, but I wasn't producer on that record. But I made that record, and I mixed it and engineered it, and it's a Sailor's Guide to Earth.
Man, what a great record.
Yeah, I love that record. And
Yeah.
he had, we talked about strings and horns. And I said, "Man, let's get this arranger." So I got Jeff Steinberg to arrange the strings, and anyway, that was a pretty successful record for him.
Yeah, it was.
And but
Unusual.
it
was an
was a very
unusual
unusual record.
And that's kind of cool that you both are sitting here, because that's the thing about Harold too. It was never the same thing. It was always unusual.
Unusual is good.
Yep,
that's the
absolutely.
only way you can get anybody's attention.
Yep.
And so he got a Grammy for that, and it was up for Record of the Year against like Beyonce and
Yep,
stuff.
I remember.
You know, I mean, we went out there and was on TV, and he performed one of the songs with 30 violin players and stuff and all that. But so after we did that record, I went on tour with him, did sound, which, pretended to do sound. I'd go out and stand by the board and point at this guy. It was a lot of fun, but and he called me and he goes, "Man," he says, "he says, there's this buddy of mine in Kentucky that needs to make a record. You want to do it with me?" And I said, "Well, hell yeah, And that was Tyler Childers. And so we got Tyler down there, and we used Sturgill's drummer, Miles Miller, who's absolutely fantastic. And I called in, I got Russ Paul and Mike Henderson, bless his soul, he's gone. And Dave Rowe on the bass, he's gone too, excuse me. But anyway, we made this record in a couple of days, 2 days, mixed it in another day, mastered it. I signed a contract and it went on its way. Well, next thing you know, people are coming up to me and they go, "Hey man, you heard this guy's Tyler Childers record?" He said, "Man, that's incredible." And I said, "Really?" And And there was some guy on Dan's bus, one of the roadies that would stay up all night drinking, listening to it all night long. And man, it started selling records. This guy blew up. Mm-hmm. I mean, he blew up.
Yeah.
And we spent $15,000 making that record. That's how much we spent.
Wow.
And they gave me 10. That was my advance. They gave me 10. And Sturgill didn't take an advance. And but I cut it at my studio over there at the butcher shop, and mixed it in a day, and then I mean it was like $25,000 record, and it has sold way over 1 million now, which is hard to do. It's hard to sell 1 million records now, especially if you're not on a major label.
Yep.
And it's
the streaming's astronomical. It's just,
man, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then we made the second one, and it did really good too. It didn't do as good as the first one, but it was very unusual. The first one was like, it was like good demos. You know? And it was like good demos. Demos are great, some of them, you know. Yep. But I had a good band, and man, it sounded good, and we didn't mix it enough to mess it up. It's like, throw it up.
But you can go back a ways, even a decade or two or three, and the first one,
it's always the best.
So much time and heart is in it that it's just better.
I know, man. And you get them while they're green. You get them before they know what they're doing.
Yep.
We snuck up on him. Well, he didn't know he was. It happened so fast. He didn't even know he was making a record. He didn't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
And all we did was edit out long intros. Some of these singer-songwriter guys, they'll strum on the guitar for 2 minutes before they start singing.
Yep.
Shit can all that, trim the fat, don't bore us, get to the chorus. If you ain't got a chorus, we'll find one in there somewhere. And turn it into something they can play, You know the deal.
Yeah.
And
well, there was some record here, and I know it's happened once, probably more often than I know, that you guys had done. It was a big record, and they weren't happy. The engineers weren't happy with the mix, and you pulled in, or you weren't happy with the last mix they did, and you said, "I like this one we did 2 days ago." And it was a rough.
Rough.
They called it a rough. You went, "That's our record right there," and it was. You remember what that was?
Yeah.
It was a big record.
Yeah. It sure was. I remember that.
I don't remember which one it was now.
I can't either now.
Man, I remember mixing. One record, Cowboy bragged because we mixed it for 40 days and 40 nights. And it almost killed us.
It could have been maybe Why Lady Why.
It might have been, yeah.
And I think one of them might have been the drummers. They all play a little differently. And this guy, he was a member of the band when this was made, and he knew when not to play,
right,
Right. Mm-hmm. He played the stuff he did.
He played like he knew the song.
He enhanced what was going on.
Yeah, instead of writing a chart and saying, I'm going to bang it through here.
And this is how I would do it as a drummer kind of thing, and it was really good. And we never got it quite as good as, to me, as that demo was,
Mm-hmm.
So it was a rough mix or a demo or?
Well, we started with that cut.
Right. Oh, you started with the demo
cut. And try to get
cut
it to sound like the rough mix.
Oh,
yeah. And that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean,
asking someone to do something that might even be considered wrong, I used
whatever
to do, that word is.
I used to take so these consoles, these recording consoles have that I/O module, where you can have the input and the output on the same module, not have a monitor section.
Sure.
But it's built into the console. And so when we would record at Cowboys, we'd make a rough of the monitor, what you're monitoring.
Yes.
You know, and not bring you're not even going through
A
the
copy
faders.
of what you're listening.
A copy of what you're listening to right when you get done cutting the thing.
Right.
You just make the rough. I'm
End
gonna
of the
make the
set,
rough
yeah.
while I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, where I don't have to go back tonight
right.
after I'm tired.
That's right.
And some of those, man, there was a couple of those that Cowboy said, you know, I mean, we'd mix it for days and overdub on it and fix on it and stuff, and he'd still keep going back to, to that rough, you know, and that's one of the things I won't do anymore is I won't send the act home with the rough.
Yep.
Because they get used to it. They get used to them, and then there you're stuck. You know, then you have to argue and say, hey, you know, but that's not the vision of the thing. They go home and listen to something 100 times, and they get used to a rough, which is not always a good thing.
Good, yo.
Yeah, but the artist can get confused by roughs
If you're not used to doing that.
Well, that's right.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. Now, I wouldn't be scared to send a rough home with Ricky Skaggs or somebody, because he would hear the things that's right about it and wrong about it,
right?
Or if it needs something else. But somebody off the street that's never made a record or something, and then you make them a copy before it's done, you can shoot yourself in the foot pretty hard, and I've done it many times. And you know, they don't need a rough; they can have it. They can buy it at the store.
There you go. That's funny. Oh my God.
Yeah, one of the engineers has one. Anyway.
Yeah.
I remember when I was fortunate enough to work a bunch out with Rick Rubin on those Johnny Cash American recordings. Yeah.
Rick Rubin's good.
He's good. He's an odd character, but he's good. But you know, when I was out there, there was a record that was made on one of these. He was producing like 3 records at a time. He'd have 3 studios going. I was in the house downstairs.
Is that the Shangri-La studio?
No, Shangri-La. That's the one he works at all the time now, but or whenever he's in Malibu. The one I worked at was up on Miller Drive, right off of Sunset Boulevard. If you ever been to L.A. very much, which I imagine you have, La Cienega, that's La Cienega Boulevard. Mm-hmm. When it goes across Sunset, it turns into Miller Drive right there, and about a block up the street was his house right there, mansion on the salmon colored thing. Anyway, so that's where I worked, but
we don't use that word for houses here.
No,
turn right the salmon colored.
Yeah,
house,
I mean that's it's one of the Adobe looking things. Salmon, beautiful, but anyway, what I was getting to is he's producing records in 2 or 3 different studios. Had one going at Sunset Sound and one going at Ocean Way or wherever. And he would ride around in his Bentley and listen to mixes in the back of his Bentley. They'd bring out, he had this incredible stereo in this Bentley. I mean, I sat in the back of his Bentley a bunch of times listening to Johnny Cash, and he'd make notes and hand it to me and say, "See you later."
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. And but somebody leaked out a record before it was supposed to be out. Somebody from a mastering studio. And man, the shit hit the fan, man. It went nuts. It went nuts. And from that day on, the security, I mean, nobody was allowed to. I couldn't take roughs in the car or mixes with me to listen to in the car, which would help me when I wasn't in the studio. Yeah. I had to do all my listening there at that point. Yeah, because it was a big deal. It was a big band. It might have been like Red Hot Chili Peppers or somebody like that got leaked.
Wow.
Or, it was bad.
Huh.
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think they found out who did it. I mean, it's like, you can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. That was always the thing. If you remember when you were doing stuff for labels in the 90s, I can play this for you, but you can't play it for anybody else.
Well, yeah. Song. What was some of Jack's biggest songs? Was he a writer on When I Dream?
No. A girl named Sandy Mason wrote that song.
Oh, Sandy Mason.
Yep. Sandy Mason. And Jack, she played it for Jack, and he just fell in love with it.
It sounds like Jack.
Yeah. And I think the the record that was out on it was by Crystal Gale.
Yep.
That was one of her signature songs.
Yeah, that was
good
a
one.
big record. Yeah.
Yeah, but Jack sung it better than anybody.
Yeah.
He'd sing that song. But
Now, there was a song that had the word Hong Kong.
oh yeah, that's
What
there's
was
a
that
song called "Baby Is Gone," and it'd go. If I were a writer, I'd go to Hong Kong and try to forget that my baby is gone. It was a beautiful song.
Yeah.
I love that song.
I don't
But
know that one.
his biggest songs,
His selection of words sometimes just
Yeah.
really
amazed
good,
me.
man.
Yeah.
You know,
He's really good.
he
That's all
wrote
you can say.
some songs like "Just Someone I Used to Know."
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was a duet. It's "Just Someone I Used to Know," and then George Jones had "It's Just a Girl I Used to Know."
Who's
it
the
worked both
picture
ways.
of
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
picture.
just someone I
Yeah,
used to
beautiful
know.
song.
Yeah,
And,
great song.
Yeah, man.
And he wrote I Guess Things Happen That Way for Johnny Cash.
Yep.
He wrote Ballad of a Teenage Queen.
Yeah.
Yep.
He wrote It'll Be Me, which was on the flip side of Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, which
I didn't know that.
which he just, he was,
Wow.
and but he told me stories about Sun. He really made a career out of being at Sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was only there 2 years. 2
Really?
years is not very long.
No, it's not. Wow.
What a great place to be for 2
What
years.
a great place to, and just at the right time. And check
Yeah.
this out. Check
Yeah.
this out. So Jack starts work. Jack had buddied up. He had found this guy named Billy Lee Riley. You remember him? My gal is red hot.
Oh,
Your
yeah,
gal
yeah,
ain't.
yeah.
This guy named Billy Lee Riley and became friends with Jack. And Jack he had bought a tape recorder and some microphones and had it in his basement of his house in Memphis. And he would take the tape over to Sun to put the echo on it, to put the slapback on it, because you could do it with it takes 3 tape machines, So he would take it over there and Sam said, I think I'd like for you to go to work for me. You're making some good sounding tapes. He said, I'd like for you to go to work for me. So Jack goes to work for Sam. And not long after that, Johnny had signed with Columbia, with CBS, but he wanted to go to CBS, but he still owed Sam 30 sides.
Uh-huh.
He owed him 30 sides.
Wow.
And Jack and Johnny didn't like each other because Sam said, I'll put you in there with Jack Clement. You can finish up, you can finish out your contract. And, there wasn't any bad blood, but Sam didn't want to run the board no more. So he put Johnny and Jack together. And then I guess after they were together for a few days, they decided that they really loved each other and recorded some of the best stuff. He recorded Big River, and Jack's playing a kick drum and a guitar on Big River, the original cut.
Wow.
He cut Guess Things Happen That Way and Ballad of a Teenage Queen, and Johnny was cutting Jack's songs, and they wrote a couple together, and that was when they became friends.
Yeah.
Wow.
As finishing out that contract. And then Jack would call Jerry Lee, would ask Jerry just to hire him to play the piano on stuff. And then he started recording Jerry Lee, and that's how that happened.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the drummer, J.M. Van Eaton, was still in school, and Jack would go pick him up from high school and bring him over to play the drums, It's the only drummer around, J.M.
Wow.
Van Eaton. And
Wow.
anyway, it was, what a time to be
Boy, no
somewhere.
kidding.
Yeah.
And Elvis coming in and out all the time. He loved it there. And the $1 Million Quartet,
Yep.
the $1 Million Quartet. Jack had the good sense to reach over and push record on the microphone that was hanging in that room.
Wow.
That's how they got the $1 Million Quartet.
Wow.
He was there and he reached over and
Put the recorder
put the recorder on, and the girl up front called the Commercial Appeal. I think that's what it was, the name of the paper down there, the Commercial Appeal. And they sent a photographer over to take their picture, and that's the picture.
Wow.
But
Wow.
Way to go.
yeah,
Yeah, man.
and he's at the right place, the right time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then he,
They say that's luck, but I think it's fate.
me too.
Me too.
I think so too.
I do too.
You know, because he picked up Billy Lee Riley hitchhiking. He picked him up hitchhiking.
Yeah.
Wow.
How would you know that?
How would you, right?
Wow.
You know, and there's all this stuff that, you know, Jack had dementia at the end the last 3 or 4 years. You know, he couldn't really remember stuff, but he could remember stuff a long time ago, like it was this morning.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I mean, in detail with people wearing
Yeah.
and stuff.
What we do last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
or
yeah.
this morning? I don't
Yeah.
know. I have a clue what I
Yeah,
did this morning. but
Absolutely.
50 years ago, 60 years ago, I remember it like it's this morning. You know,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah.
Yeah, he picked up Billy Lee Riley hitchhiking, and Billy Lee was great. He was really good.
I love that record.
Yeah, me too. And
Well, you know, you're talking about fate here. You know, I don't think I ever asked you. That you mentioned that he picked him up hitchhiking. How did you hear about Alabama? How did that come down? I don't think I've ever asked
Yeah.
you that.
Well, that was a kind of a weird situation. Excuse me. I knew a couple that owned a company called Nationwide Sound, and it was a local Nashville company, and they at the time distributed independent records and would do the promotion and the marketing. And so anyone that made a record and could get a record deal could press their own records and put them out on Nationwide Sound.
nice.
So
If you had the money, you could get it pressed and put it out.
and I got to know Joe and Betty Gibsons. It was a man and wife, and they had a guy that wrote really well that worked there also. I want to say Jimmy Payne, maybe. Would he have written a big hit in the 60s or so, 70s? I think so.
Your memory's better than mine.
Yeah.
Well,
Better than mine too.
I'm showing now. But anyway, got to know him, and so Betty was she was a rather an aware lady musically, and she knew kind of what I was trying to do, and she got the song "I Want to Come Over" was on MDJ out of Texas, and she called me when she started promoting it. Says
this was an Alabama
so this
song.
would be a good band. They could have a hit, but they need some better records, a little bit than they're actually making. So I went to Myrtle Beach to see them, to answer your question, I think, Russ. But
What year do you think this was?
this was about 78.
Really?
Yeah. And they had actually started the album at a studio called LSI,
Yeah.
and
I remember the studio.
so they had several sides cut, and I went to work on the album, and then started recutting and cutting some things they had not done yet, and we recut Alabama, and we finished it up, and it was 8.5 minutes long. And well, I can tell you right now, this is not going to work.
That's a half a roll of tape.
Yeah, you can't work. This won't work at radio. But the only time to do that, radio, they spend and make a lot of money. November, December, and even January, but nothing like November and December. Even October maybe. But so you would, at the time, you
So
had
that's when the sales were the best?
it was more regulated, and you could only run so many minutes an hour at any time.
Yeah, radio.
On the radio.
But somehow in January and February, the commercial load was lighter, if you'll have it.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a little more airtime that you could use for a radio or for a record, and so by releasing it, we did an edit and got it down to, I think, 5.5 minutes. And by releasing it when we did, we had a better shot of getting the record played. And
Right.
And we didn't get it to 1, but we got it, top 10.
What song was this?
My Home's in Alabama.
My Home's in Alabama.
Yeah.
Do I know that song?
That was the first big hit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's in the late 70s,
Yeah,
right?
Drinking was forbidden
Yeah.
in my Christian country home.
I need to listen to that.
Yeah.
It's so Randy wrote it. It's very well written.
Hey, did you engineer that first album?
I'm sorry.
Did you engineer the first album you did with him?
First 3.
I thought you did. Yeah.
You were an engineer? I
Yeah.
didn't
See, a
know
lot of
that.
people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
Hell, he was a.
Oh,
he
he's
was a first,
been in that hot seat. Man,
Yeah,
it's
he
a
was-
miserable place to be sometimes.
He was a first-class radio telephone license holder for radio.
Is that
Before.
right?
Yeah, he did that too. Yeah, the technical side, nobody would know.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know he was an engineer.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
not.
You were.
I thought I was one time,
Yeah, man.
but
That's,
I got over
I,
it.
I think the title engineer has been distorted over the.
You hear
I was
what
an
you
operator.
hear.
I was an operator.
Well,
I wasn't really.
you
an
could
engineer.
hear also. Though.
Well,
Yeah.
you got to.
See, sometimes a person can't get what he really hears.
Well,
But someone, Jim Cotton was,
was the greatest.
the best I ever was around.
Yeah.
And I worked with him in Memphis before I moved to Nashville, doing mainly commercials.
Right.
And he worked for the same company.
And he sang too, right?
He sang. He sang all the R&B versions. He was really good. Played bass in a band.
He did.
Yeah.
I loved that guy.
oh man, what
Jim
a great
Cotton
guy.
was most unique guy I've ever been around.
And Joe Scaife is gone now too.
Yep.
Yeah, they're both gone.
Yep.
And George Clinton,
Yeah.
Butch Carr,
Yeah.
Butch Carr, I didn't know that.
and
Yep.
who else?
Oh, everybody but us.
Yeah. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I mean, some great guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talented.
Yep. You know what? You guys need to make a record together. I'm telling you.
I want to. We're trying.
to.
We're trying.
Y'all need
We're
to.
trying.
We're working on it.
We got.
We got to have the right deal.
every
and,
time we get close to getting where we can talk about it, some kind of monkey wrench gets into Tractor's gears. But I want to.
Y'all have a lot in common.
Well, we like to have a good time.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we do.
I love
We
Harry.
could probably make a good record together.
I think we could. Yeah. And one thing Harold always had that, everybody had some of, but Harold had the best collection of tapes, of stupid tapes. he had the funniest
I
collection.
still have some.
There was old gal. He used to put on this old gal would sing the robot song. You remember that robot?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever heard that one.
It's my robot song. I mean,
Forgot about that one.
oh man, we'd sit up here in his office and he'd play those tapes and we'd laugh till we just couldn't. It was-
Fun. Interesting to me is, again, as we sit here and talk and stuff, and I mentioned this in one of the other podcasts, but today especially, how lucky, and I'll use you and I as an example, but, the people we came up under and the people, the way we developed our careers, it was all about characters. It wasn't about, we're
Characters,
going to
man.
make a record that's going to come out now and say,
characters.
Yeah.
It's like you said, I wasn't, I was just trying to make something I loved. And you said, Jack, he wasn't trying to make, he was just trying to make something he loved. And Harold, I loved it. I wasn't aiming at anything.
Well, Harold knew how to make hits. The rest of us were just trying to make a living. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
I'm trying to make something.
I don't know if there's such a difference at all because it's always this. Does it make me feel this?
Yeah.
And the further I got into the music business, I saw less and less of that. I felt like and more like we want something that's 82 beats a minute that does this and that. And
The digital didn't help us. I don't think it helped us.
No, I don't think so either.
It really. I mean, having that tape turning over there and.
It really
you respected the
AM
equipment.
radio,
You respected the equipment, and you had to pay attention.
Yeah, you had to pay attention.
You really had to pay attention. You got somebody's tape on there, and you hit the wrong button and hit that red button, and you're in trouble if you're not paying attention.
I've done it.
I did it.
You can destroy a lot of stuff.
You can ruin a lot of stuff. I mean, my whole time, there's really only one time that I raced a little part of a bass. I mean, I was really always paid attention to it really close, about what track goes in record, where you punch in. And I raced a couple of bars of Marty Stewart, of a bass player. And he said, "You're lucky I'm a good bass player." And he whipped out the bass, put it right back on there. But I heard this story about this Johnny Cash record that was being made, and they were doing it over at Tom Paul's place upstairs over at Hillbilly Central. Remember that over there? There's a Tom Paul Blazers.
Yeah, I remember.
18th, yeah.
And so anyway, they was making this Johnny Cash record, and the engineer was at the console. And the tape operator was behind him in a glass room because the tape machines were loud. And they had hand signals, And these guys, they're doing these hand signals. And the tapes rolling along. They were going to punch in like a tambourine or something. Signals got crossed up. They put it in record and had every track in record.
No.
Oh, no.
And Johnny Cash was out of town, and they've worked for days trying to fix it, and it's still got this thing in the tape, this little hiccup in the tape.
Oh yeah.
But they heard the hiccup so much they got used to it. And, and it's on a song called "He's Alive" is the name of the song.
Wow.
And but man, that's a nightmare.
Oh yeah,
that's a nightmare.
I think again, the kids today doing this, have undo.
Undo, and you never really lose anything.
No, that's right. You can go, but you
have to try to lose it.
And in the days when we were doing it, I started engineering too. You had to know the machine because you had this much room between the record head and the playback head, and so you had to know when the erase was coming on. Every machine was different, getting in and out. It was a big deal.
Jack's was an M79 3M.
Yep.
Remember the kind with a loop head.
Yep.
And the input and input selector and record and playback was all in this thing above the console about this long, just a bunch of buttons up there. And the remote was over here, and you had to hit these buttons at the same time to go into input when you're overdubbing. Right. It was crazy. And I'd sit there like this all day long, punching in, and getting in and getting out. And, and that thing, I was so happy when it left.
Yeah.
It was, he finally got a Studer,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Studer.
That had auto input, auto in and out, and I couldn't believe that.
Two 850s.
Yep.
Yeah, those were the best.
Yep.
Those are self-aligning, right? Or did you? Well, those.
I don't recall that.
I don't remember that either.
Well, there's the model that were self-aligning. You could push a button and it would align to whatever
might have
tape.
been a later model.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know that ours was that. I don't
We're
remember.
talking 80s and 90s.
Yeah, Cowboy bought an 80, not an 880. He had bought an 80, which is the machine down from that.
880, actually.
Yeah, y'all had an 880.
Yeah, that's what we had.
We had two.
Yeah, Cowboy had an 80, which was...
you were talking about the digital
That's
world.
why they were 32 tracks. We had two, so
The Mitsubishis
we thought we needed
the Mitsubishi.
64-track console. So we could have been mini tracks.
You know, we were talking about digital not doing us any favors. When we built the Focusrite, we also built an API Legacy for me at that time.
Love those.
And we bought the first two Sony 48 track digitals to come to town. And there's a whole long. So we got the B stock. They had two of them in town for the AES show that year. We bought those. We got to deal them because they were B stock, and I don't want to tell you how much B stock cost because it was a lot. And we got them. And Ed C was working down in B with these new tape machines. And Ed C's the one was just crazy. We got to get these machines. Said, and the reason was, you'll love this, that when you're doing a vocal on a 24 track, or even on the Mitsubishis, you record, and you got to rewind back. You got to sit and wait for it to kind of go. He said,
right.
Man, the reels on your, I don't know if you remember this, the reels on the 48 go 35 miles an hour.
Oh, they were going so fast.
35 miles an hour, yeah.
It was scary.
So we get them, and you might remember some of this stuff. So we get them, and Ed's down there working on a track one day, and he calls me. Now, we've just gotten these machines, and they were, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, crazy.
And he says, this thing sounds like shit. And I said, what? Something's wrong. So I came down, and he said, man, I'm telling you, it sounds bad. And I didn't notice it like he was noticed because he had transferred from analog,
right.
to use it. And so anyway, he said, well, I want to record a sine wave. And does anybody have an oscilloscope? Well, I had an oscilloscope. That's a whole other story. So I went home, got my oscilloscope, and came back and recorded 1,000 hertz on the Sony home DAT machine.
Right.
Because those were all home units,
right.
they called
That's
them. They
right.
weren't made by the pro people
right.
at Sony.
DAT machine.
So we recorded 1,000 cycles, and we looked at it. It was absolutely beautiful.
Short-lived.
Yeah. We looked at the 1,000 hertz, and it looked great. We recorded on the 48, and it looked ugly. It was all square and ugly.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And so Ed was freaking out. Now, if you know Ed C at all,
I've been around him a little bit.
He's meticulous about. Yeah. Oh man. So I mean, just he can belabor a point, but he was right about this. So we called Sony, and they, anyway, we went through all these conversations. Finally, they came to town, and we showed them a few days later. And then, so the deal was that the people that made the home units didn't even know the people that made the pro units never even knew they existed. Pretty much, the engineers were separate. They didn't share technology. Right. Same company, Sony. So anyway, the Sony guys came in and did a fix for our machine. And after that point, if you owned a Sony 40, if you remember this, it'd say it had the mod on, it had a sticker, it had the mod or didn't have the mod.
Oh, really?
And that was when they did those. Yeah.
What was that? So when they first came out with these digital reel-to-reels,
yeah,
it's the converters in them would square things off.
That's right. That's what it was.
And then Apogee invented the thing that smoothed that hump. That was probably the what they did to it was put in that Apogee thing.
This is before Apogee. Yeah, but Sony went in and they came back with a mod, and you had to put it on every board, of course, whatever they did.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about it, but anyway. And after that point, if you can find one of those today, for years everybody had one. It either had a sticker that said this has been modded or not. But we were so excited.
I remember
those
things, man. It was.
Yep.
I'm
really honestly,
I got to say, Pro Tools sounds really good to me. If you go through analog console with it, just use it as a tape machine. It sounds pretty. My setup at home, I have an 80B, a Trident 80B, and my Pro Tools and my plate reverbs and stuff. And it's
my favorite console of all time. It's a piece of wire.
You sell out plate reverb?
Yeah, when the flood happened in Nashville in 2010, was that when it was?
Yeah.
When the flood happened, right after the flood, it flooded the Grand Ole Opry House, the new one. And they decided that it was time to get rid of all analog gear. And I got a call from a guy that I knew. And he goes, Fergie, he said, they're going to get rid of both EMT plates. And I said, well, I want them. And I said, how much? And he said, just make an offer. And I said, how about $1,200 for both of them? And he goes, fine, come get them. And they were immaculate. I mean, the 1974 when they put them in there, and they'd been in an isolated room, still had the original German stickers on them and the motors and everything. And I sold one for $4,000 and kept the other one.
Wow.
And but yeah, it was like every once in a while you get lucky on a piece of gear. You don't usually, but
goodbye.
It was a good buy, and it served me well.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I've had it on a lot of records. It's all over that. It's all over all those records that I do.
There was
everywhere.
an engineer here one time. His name was Lawson.
Yeah, Jim Lawson. Gene Lawson. Yeah, he's still around.
He built a plate.
Yep.
I had 2 of those.
They were good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
he's still around now. He's making
they
microphones.
were a little different, but good.
Yeah. Now Auerbach has a plate. He got the one that Chip Smoman had in Memphis, and I've never heard one that long before. It's a bigger piece of metal. It's a longer piece of metal.
Yeah.
And I mean, it'll last 10 seconds. I've never heard one
Yeah.
that will go that long. I mean, I like a big, beautiful reverb. I love it.
I love it too.
I love it. You know, I'm a sucker for reverb.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
I still like slapback here.
Man, me too. Me too. I mean, now that you know I had a tape slapback a long time in my studio that it was the 2-track machine that came from Studio by the Pond.
Oh yeah.
Remember that place, Studio by the Pond up there in Hendersonville?
They cut all those England Dan, John Ford Coley
Yep,
records.
I
Didn't
know.
they cut the
Doctor
first
and Dr. Hook,
Dr. Hook? Didn't they cut the first Randy Travis record out there too?
Lee Hazen.
Yeah. I think Kyle worked
Lee
out there.
Hazen.
It was Lee Hazen's place.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might have cut his first.
I could be
record
wrong
out there.
about that, but I know that's where I used to go play Kyle songs way back when I first came to town.
It was old Burlap studio down
Yeah.
there in that basement.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, my buddy gave me a 1/4-inch Ampex. I still got it, but it's
You kidding?
no, I still got it. Yeah.
The 601?
Oh, what is it? It's just a 2-track. It's like a 201 or something. It's like old. It's not even a crystal drive. It's just, you know,
It has record and playback.
has record and playback, but you can
Record on playback and you get
the slap
reverb.
and then put it back into it for the feedback.
That's what is on the second Alabama album.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, good old tapes slapback. Man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nothing sounds like that.
Nothing sounds like
I had one that I had from radio,
yeah.
and it had a cover. You could set it up just like
Right.
there's a speaker and
Oh yeah.
yeah,
You-
and a couple of RCA plugs,
Right.
and you were in business.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I brought it with me from a radio.
What
day.
kind was it? Was it a Wallensack or something?
No Ampex.
It was an little.
601.
So it was a portable Ampex.
Yeah, and I was going to tell you the front. You put the cover and it covers the speaker, and then you carry it like a piece of. It looked like Samsonite luggage.
Yeah.
It had a color and everything.
Yeah, I'd love to have.
It
one
looked
of
like
those.
that tabletop.
I'd love to have one of those. This one
they're
I
so
got on
great.
a, you know, it's on a, got a
And
stand.
then I read where Les Paul used that particular piece of equipment
really?
to enhance some of the things he did musically, and he was the master.
He was the master. Did you ever know him? I
didn't know him.
I never got to meet him.
No.
Man, that'd be cool.
Boy, what a genius!
Yeah, no
man.
kidding.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Say, where you going on vacation? No, I'm setting up my Echo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What fun times.
What y'all got the Bible out down here for?
Harold's going to start preaching in a minute.
Yeah.
man.
You gonna bust off into
I
it?
got a few words to say.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Well,
Well, guys, I think it's probably about time to start.
Pray
It is
for me.
time to wrap
Here.
it up. Fergie, I guess we can have our regular breakfast or something.
we can have breakfast if you want to.
Fergie and I used to meet every morning. Well, maybe 4 or 5 days
Yeah,
a week,
used
3 or
to-
4 days.
Yeah.
And have breakfast
Down to
and,
Pie Wagon.
and,
Oh, the pie wagon.
and discuss a lot of ways to improve the music industry. That's what we've done.
Another guy that worked for you that I hadn't talked to in a long time is Jack Key.
Jack is still around, isn't
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy died. Jimmy Key died.
Jimmy died. Yeah, Jack. Oh, Jack and I were real close. We were associates and did a lot of things together.
Yeah. I like Jack. I hadn't talked to him in
Jack's
a
a
long time.
great guy,
Yeah, I hadn't talked to him in a long time.
Yeah.
and the guy that worked with us, he passed away.
Who?
He was head of marketing. I can't recall his
Oh,
name.
he was his partner at this Where he's at now?
Jack.
Was he Jack's partner too?
Yeah.
He was. What was his name? I
can't remember either.
I can't remember. Well, anyway, I really appreciate
Jack,
you guys having me on
guy,
here, man.
And they,
yeah,
she has a good publishing company.
I think they lease out music to.
Yeah,
places.
They administrate a lot of, like Wings of a Dove.
Oh, really?
Wow. All of Ferlin Husky. Everything he did.
And who's the old 6 Days on Dave Dudley?
Dudley, yeah.
Wow.
All those truck driving songs.
Wow. Bull Shippers. That
was
one of the names.
You would be amazed how much is out there with New Keys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
New Keys was a company.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fun. All right, we got to wrap up.
Gotta go.
Well, I sure
Fergie,
appreciate
thank you
it.
so
Man,
much.
I
This has
hope
been
y'all
great.
can use some of this. Feel free to cut out anything you want to. Tighten it up. Produce.
Oh, we'll do that.
It needs to be produced.
We won't go past the good.
I have
mix.
nothing to do with any of that, but I'm going to
Well, you show
demand that they remove some of the stuff.
Somebody should have done this with you a long time ago.
No kidding.
You know?
No,
Hey,
it's
by the way,
great.
producer Wade, who did all this and stuff, he couldn't get here today. He wanted to be here so bad because this year we're going to do you later.
Yeah.
He wanted to be here so bad because he's a big fan.
Well,
he wanted me to tell you that.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now
you
you
got
got
to
to
have a conversation. Wade is a really good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
And
like
he
to
knows.
Maybe I know him.
He's a historian too.
Yeah, man. You know, I'll say, I was going to say this earlier. I forgot. I met you the first week I moved to Nashville.
You did?
Yep.
At where at?
Over at Cowboys.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Scaife was going over there to get something from you guys, to get a master. I can't remember now. And he said, "Come on and ride with me." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't know where I was going. And we came upstairs to that studio, and I met you that first day.
That's something. That's really something.
Isn't that funny? I still remember that because it was my first day in Nashville.
That's a while ago.
Well, that's a long time.
That was 1987.
Yeah, you guys need to get you ought to get old Alan Reynolds in here and talk to him and
Great
stuff.
idea.
He'd be fun. If you need his number, I'll give it to you.
Yep.
Or
I think
Garth
somebody
Fundus. Garth Fundus.
Yeah. I've talked to Garth.
Garth, yeah.
Yeah, and,
we've talked to
I
him.
talked to Garth. He wants to come do it. Yeah.
Yeah, Alan would be great.
Alan would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alan would be good. Alan's real sharp. He's still really sharp.
Yeah.
And
He makes good records.
he sure did. And you know something about that guy? That guy's a great singer.
Yeah, he is.
Man, he was a great singer.
Alan?
Yes,
I didn't
and
know.
writer.
I know Garth.
Oh, he
And
sang on
writer.
a lot of records.
Sang on a lot of records.
Yep.
And Garth started out as this engineer.
Yep.
That's where Garth started out. And man, they came up with that JMI sound, that Don Williams sound. That was really something.
Well,
That's
Don-
one of the most pure country sounds.
Those Don Williams records
Yeah.
killed me. Absolutely
just
killed me.
dry. They're dry.
Yep.
There's very little reverb on them, but man, they sound so good.
Yep.
It's hard. It's hard work getting something that good.
I know.
It is.
And Joe Allen's still alive. And somebody else you ought to get in here to talk? Billy Sanford. Billy Sanford, who played the electric guitar on every session that.
Billy's on everything.
Yeah, he's on every big country record there is. I mean,
Wow, that's a
he's
great
played on
idea.
all the George Jones, Tammy
That's so
records. and-
ironic you would bring his name up.
He's a buddy.
Because he played with a guy that I played with when I was.
Yeah, well, who was that? What's his-
Pee-wee.
Pee-wee. Yeah. Man, Billy's got the
Billy
greatest
was
stories.
in his band.
Well,
Billy's got the greatest stories.
Oh,
he's got
Billy
the
would
greatest-
be great. I wish he would.
yeah. Remind me.
He
to
would
put
do it. He would do it.
Remind me to make a note of that week.
Man, I'll
You
send
know,
you his
wouldn't
number.
it
I
be-
talked to him
let's-
a lot. I
we
hired
would-
him on a session 2 weeks
Wow.
ago.
Okay, this is it, guys.
Thank you, Harold.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you, Russ. I'll see y'all
You were great,
down
man.
the
We'll
road.
look forward to our next
All right.
meeting.
All right,
Thank you.
guys. Bye-bye.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Behind the Shed. Special thank you to our guests today, David Ferguson, Russ Zavitson, and Harold Shedd. Behind the Shed podcast was created by Wade Smith, produced by Russ Zavitson and Wade Smith. Camera, audio, and video and editing by Zach Day and Jack Youngblood. Music written and composed by Russ Zavitson. You can contact the show via email at behindtheshed@gmail.com or visit us on Facebook and Instagram at Behind the Shed. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform and also on our YouTube page. If you would like to support this podcast, please visit patreon.com/behindtheshed. Have a great day and share some stories. Tune in next week as we go behind the shed. If you're in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, try Pop Chevrolet. Pop Chevrolet will get you the best price guaranteed. Visit popchevy.com. That's POPS Chevy.com. This episode is brought to you by Paintsville Tourism. Paintsville is located in eastern Kentucky in the heart of the US 23 Country Music Highway. Visit paintsvilletourism.com. That's paintsvilletourism.com. Come see why Paintsville is eastern Kentucky's city of note. This episode is brought to you by Wild Bill's Fireworks. At Wild Bill's, they will help you start and maintain a successful fireworks business. Whether you're starting a retail store, a seasonal tent, or a part-time venture, Wild Bill's is your one-stop wholesale fireworks supplier. Their team can help you pick inventory. They offer business training, ongoing support to make sure you stay profitable no matter the size of your business. Call or text for more information. Just ask for Bill at 606-367-5569. That's 606-367-5569. Or visit wildbillsfireworks.com and make sure you ask about their financing plan.